Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 3 of Passing Under Yellow. I'm your host, Gino Manley, and with the young Ben Ali. Say hi, Ben.
Hello, viewers.
I like your mic like that.
Yes,
it's like
it's
you're out in the field.
very professional.
All right, sounds good. Well, our guests tonight are my good friends, and if you're looking, which is the premise of the show, to get into wheel racing, these are the folks you need to talk to. Full disclosure, me and Ben kind of race for them, so we have to be nice. But that would be Mike and Amy Gorman of Open Throttle Racing. Say hello, guys.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
So Mike and Amy are somehow in the course of 1 year have started a full-on Champcar, WRL, sometimes PBOC, I guess now HSR operation with a fleet of cars. And as long as I've known them, just one day they woke up and there was a bunch of race cars in their garage. So today we're going to talk a little bit about them. If you guys are again, kind of our core audience in DEs now. You can contact them about getting a track day rental. They also host some track days to their other business, which we'll talk about. But these are the guys you need to talk to if you want to make that transition like we've been talking about in the past couple episodes. They have a kind of a full line of cars from NA Miatas that are all aptly named and they're part of the family, up to the E92 M3s that you've been seeing me race. If you've been following me at all for the past year, you're going to see a lot of green cars. So we're going to kind of jump right in it. Mike Gorman, so you've got to explain to me this. So obviously I've known you since, because we're kind of in the same industry, retail automotive. We knew each other kind of through the track day scene. So you kind of had a very successful career in retail automotive. You work for
absolutely.
a prestigious, Highline dealer here in town. So how does one go from there to being under cars at 1 a.m. in the morning, trying to figure out where you're going to be? So kind of explain the transition, not going too far back, but retail automotive to race team motor. How's that work?
So 6 or 7 years ago, we started the track day variant of our company, Open Throttle Track Days, and we started doing the full-blown arrive and drive with track car rentals. During that period of time, I started getting into time trial with the green BMW in its first iteration. And I really kind of got caught by that competitive bug. We had a good run in time trial with the car, but then I did my first arrive and drive as a renter in a Champcar endurance race in a 944 Porsche. And I was hooked. The whole concept of, good use of your time, you're going to be there for a whole day. Time trial, you get 6 or 7 minutes of seat time, throughout the whole day. In an enduro, you're in the car for 2 to 4 hours, and I really, really enjoyed that type of pace quite a bit more. So we kind of transitioned from renting out track cars to building our first enduro car, which is Kermit, which we're still running in Champcar, to do the 24 hours of Sebring. We really just wanted to get together and do that race, so we decided we're going to put together a throwaway car because we figured 24 hours of Sebring would pretty much smoke a car. We never went behind the wall. We did pad changes, and we ended up finishing 23rd overall in a WRL field with a 120 horsepower Mazda Miata.
Nice.
From that point, we really liked the concept.
We have one car now.
We have one car at this point. This
one
was
NA Miata, okay.
This was if you're keeping track, this
is like
Sebring.
This is not even a year ago, right?
So this was Sebring for WRL. So this was October of 2021.
Okay.
Very quickly, we realized that we could do things pretty well, and we know how to prep a car. My biggest frustration as an arrive and drive renter was not finishing a race. Now, I definitely sorted by price whenever I was shopping for seats and got an experience to reflect that. But it also kind of taught me what I didn't want to do with our car moving forward. I didn't want to have to worry about anything. I wanted to do all that work while it was in the garage at our house versus doing it on the side of the track. So we had good success with that, and we had quite a few people that were interested in running with us. And then we had another Mazda Miata that just showed up in our driveway
we'll have to talk about that for sure. Okay, so now we're at 2.
We're at 2. So that second Mazda Miata was dropped off by a famous now IMSA driver, Gino Manley. And it was rough. It was driven in a 24-hour race, which it did very well in.
Yep.
Driven into a trailer, and then that's where it sat for a period of 4 years. So we took that car, essentially rebuilt everything on it, and that is now Frankenstein. So it's now lime green with the rest of them, aero car, and we run that in Champcar. Have had really good luck with that vehicle as well. It is actually the only vehicle that we've had in the past year that had DNF, but we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that at some point.
We'll talk about that one a little bit later. So now we're at 2. We've got a track day car, Red Rocket, which was a 1994 Miata.
Right.
And our buddy had this caged race car, which is Specs. So we decided that we're going to trade for that. And now we're at 3. So that's how we got to the 3 Miatas. We ended up caging my wife's former daily driver, then turned time trial car, then turned enduro racer. We ended up caging that car, and that's when we started running that vehicle in WRL. So we're up to 4.
Correct.
And 1 in WRL. And if running multiple cars in Champ, it kind of taught us anything. It's if you're going to bring 1 car, you might as well
Cost
bring
the scale.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Cost the scale. So we're doing the same thing right now with adding the second E92 M3 and the E46. So we will have put together and assembled 6 race cars in a period of 14 months.
Right.
So we're going to take a break after that and run these cars for a while.
So you say.
Yeah, that's what we say right now.
So, all right. So, okay. So we'll go back in time. So a little bit. Okay. So at what point, and obviously I know, again, there's no way to run a race team and to have a career at the same time. Certainly.
Right.
So at what point did you say, okay, this is it. I'm going to leave a very good, fulfilling career that's done well for me, and I'm going to try to do this. And so when and what was the reasoning?
So basically, we quickly realized that it's very time consuming,
right.
Obviously. Getting multiple cars ready for races and then just being gone for the Thursday to Monday scenario in the car business was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it came to a crossroads of, do I continue to try and do both a little half-assed and everything kind of falls down, or do I take everything and focus it all on one? So that's what I decided to do. Is I decided to leave the corporate world and pursue this full time. I've got an incredible partner for a wife that will support me in any insane decision that we make, like leaving a job like that to do this. But we're almost a year into it now, and I have absolutely no regrets. I don't possibly know how I could try and balance the two now.
Sure.
It just doesn't work. And if you're going to bet on yourself, you better be willing to go all in.
Well, and I remember talking to you about that, and you're like, hey, listen, again, I've done well for myself. If I'm going to do this now, I don't want to have the regret of not doing it later.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And as you know, the car business will always be there waiting for you.
We're here waiting for
back,
you.
so.
Absolutely. And so, Amy, were you okay with that? I mean, obviously, he had a very good, good gig going on. So, were you supportive 100%? No doubts on it?
Yeah. I've owned businesses, and he's always been supportive of me. So, I saw how the 24 hours went, and we just knew we had something, and let's go for it.
Ran with it. Okay. So, about a year in, how do you think it's going?
It's going great. We are definitely looking forward to hopefully slowing down a bit as far as the car building next year. Anybody that's ever built a race car knows how stressful it is, and building multiple at a time with deadlines can just adds to that. But I think it's going great. The people that we've met along the way, the crew that we work with, are unbelievable human beings, and I'm just very, very, very fortunate that they've chosen us to work with. And we've done some pretty incredible things over this past year, and I'm excited to see where we go in 2023 as well. Yeah,
actually, I had to count on my notes here. It's in the last 12 months with the team, I don't think I've ever had more fun. I mean, I think you can probably say it now. I mean, there's some stressful fun that goes along with that. That's like, what are we doing here? But I can look back, and look at, some really good moments, really good rewarding moments, and we'll kind of talk about that. All right, so you talked about people just a second ago, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up very early on in this. For instance, at VIR, we ran 4 cars.
Yep, we have four cars running.
This
for
is a 24-hour race.
Yep.
Those cars never came off track.
Nope. No, not once. We ran all 4 cars finished in the top 10. We never went behind the wall one time. So that's now 5 24-hour races that we've managed to pull off without a single trip behind the wall.
So, I obviously being involved in that, being in the new person car and talking to a lot of the renters, the one common theme was they were so impressed with how well the operation was, and that goes back to the people. So what do you think it is? And we can name them off. We got 2 Bradleys, we have Miguel, we have Cindy, we have so many people involved at every single weekend, and it kind of rotates as to when their schedule allows.
Yep.
But really, I can't think of a single crew member I wouldn't have, any given weekend. Yeah, so what do you think it is that you've attracted this group of people? I mean, they're all fantastic.
We're all in it for the same reason, and that's first and foremost to have fun, make sure everybody else is having fun, and to finish the race with as little incident as possible. And it's pretty wild when you think of how we've individually come across. Each person that we work with has an incredible story of luck and how we've wound up partnered together. Mm-hmm. And we just absolutely wouldn't be able to do it without them. I mean, the amount of toll that tracking a car takes on any particular car, well, it's multiplied by racing, and it's multiplied by endurance racing, and then the calendar that we run. I mean, we'll be at a track like Sebring, for example. We're racing 16 hours at Sebring, and we have to be at Daytona on Wednesday.
Unbeknownst to you.
Yeah.
I said, hey, we got to be at Daytona.
Yeah, I thought we had a few more days than that, but I mean, we've managed to assemble a team that can rebuild a car from 16 hours of the most grueling track, arguably in the world, on a car, and rewrap it, have it pretty, and doing 165 miles an hour at Daytona 2 days later. So it's pretty. It's 170. Depends on who's in the car.
Exactly.
It's incredible, and absolutely we wouldn't be able to do it without that team. And like I said, every one of them is unique in how we've come to meet them. Whether it's been giving somebody a shell for a car, that's how we met other Bradley, or having you help us find people for our PBOC quest in the M3, and that's how we found Bradley Brown. It's been a wild ride, and we appreciate the hell out of the people that are with us, because with them, none of this would be possible without them.
Well, I think one cool thing you do, and I'll kind of talk, and Ben, we talked about this in one of the episodes about crewing, and how crew eventually can become guys in the car, and I think you've been very fair about this. And tell me if I'm incorrect. A lot of these guys have crewed their time in exchange for either seat time at a track day, maybe a race seat. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I know that's very important to you, because there's been times where I've seen you not take a paid driver to give somebody a seat that crewed for us, at a previous race.
Absolutely. You've got to take care of the people that are taking care of you and your cars and your organization. So, and I mean this with all due respect to all of our paid renters, but I'm pretty much always going to give priority to people that have worked their way into a seat with us in terms of getting seat time or their favored, driving stint or what have you. I want to make sure that they're taken care of, and when you put sweat equity into the car, you want to get that return from wringing it out a little bit. So we really enjoy when our crew members take advantage of that, and everybody depends on their different skill levels, whether or not they'll translate directly into a race time with us, or track time with us, and ultimately into a race seat. But we want to give people a bit of return on the effort that they're putting into the cars. So that's a big thing for us, is if you want to get involved in doing enduro, probably the best way and easiest way to get in and kind of get a view that nobody else really would is by volunteering to crew at a race, or crewing at a race. With a team that has a work for drive time program.
Right.
I think it's very important to have them be able to understand why we do certain things to the car, or why we set it up a way, and give a little bit of experience on firsthand of the abuse that the cars take.
No, I think that's fair. And Ben, you've been there. You've crewed for me for many years in teams. Yeah. And so, when you jumped into that car at VIR, I mean, I think you being on the crew, again, and actually being involved, you had a better understanding of what was going on.
Yeah, it helps a ton, and especially for, a lot of the first timers and stuff, it's good to volunteer, because there's so much to learn, and you gain a lot more respect for everything that's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on other than just the car driving on track during a race weekend. So, I mean, arguably, more so than that seems like the easy part sometimes. So to get a first-hand experience of all that stuff, I think is very important for anybody that's interested in pursuing some type of endurance race program.
Well, no, I mean, like I said, that I don't think you would have the success at all if it wasn't for the group of people that you put together. But, it's one thing to have a good group of people, but to keep them around too. And again, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the crew members have wanted to come back at some point when their time allows. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so Open Throttle Racing, at least online, if you look at the forums, one of the biggest, you guys pride yourself, and I'm just as guilty of being there and experiencing it, is your hospitality. So
it is top notch.
Yeah, it's important. It's a very important aspect of a race weekend, and I've experienced all sides of it.
Food is amazing.
So, I really want to focus in on that, because I think, again, when people are looking to spend money, and again, the people that are listening to this are people that are in track days and they want to go arrive and drive. You can have a really sucky weekend if you go there and the team sucks and it's hot and there's nothing to get on. So I think maybe you experienced this in your rental racing.
Yeah, of course.
So you decided not to do this.
Absolutely.
So I kind of throw this to Amy. I mean, was that a big component, was the hospitality?
Oh, for sure. Well, the first race we didn't have any at all. And then we started realizing, we just started adding things, and it seems like every race we add something new to the lineup. So
this was kind of funny. We were racing once. I remember you looked at me and said, Gino, car's falling apart. I'm like, yep. He said, but there's barbecue. Have some barbecue. And, I had some barbecue and things were better as the car was falling apart. But, it is a very, important aspect. And I mean, do you think maybe that comes from just your retail background that, hey, customer, I mean, these are, again, it's really tough because part of these people are teammates are on a team, but the other half is they are consumers, and we're trying to provide an experience to them. So you think it's the background that kind of made you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in a customer-facing business my entire life, and you want to make sure that you do anything that you can to maximize somebody's experience. Well, and we know that there's a lot of different options for arrive and drive out there, and we want to make sure that we feel like a family. I mean, we want to enjoy the people that we spend time with out there. I mean, we want to like you just as much as you guys want to like us. So we want to put our best foot forward. We're inviting you into our house. So we want to make sure that you're fed, you have drinks, you have a good time, we laugh and have fun. And I do enjoy having a home-cooked meal at the track. and everybody's eaten some questionable food at the track over the years. And
100%.
When we have, like at VIR, I mean, we had 40 heads between drivers and crew and family and all that. We had probably 40, 45 people. And the best way to feed that many people, in my opinion, is barbecue.
Well, it's funny. I remember VIR, I think I had one of the nights since I got out and I was tired. It was like having home-cooked macaroni in 2 a.m. is like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like, I'm good to go for another 6 hours, So,
absolutely.
No, and I think that's, again, we kind of joke about it online on posts like that, but, it is important, So
I think there's a wide range of what people want to get out of a race weekend. And, there's some people, you'll just see them during their prescribed drive time. And, a lot of other people, they want to make it's a big deal. I mean, we are trying to make dreams come true and facilitating people becoming a race car driver. We want to try and check all of the boxes.
So you kind of go right into something I want to talk about, and I feel like you'll agree with me on this. So, in particular, the Champcar program, we're welcoming to people that want to give this a try.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you're a pro driver or want to be pro driver, looking to go out there and go as fast as you can. I mean, we'll accommodate you, but this might not be the best fit for you because we're going to have newer people on the team.
Yeah,
so.
we tend to. It can be difficult finding a seat that is open to a first-time driver, and now that we've been doing this a year and we've put a lot of first-time drivers in, I think we had 13 people do their first endurance race with us last year, first ever wheel-to-wheel experience, and for the most part, those are the best people to have in the car. I mean, they are always the most concerned about keeping the car in one piece, and really they just, you can kind of see them light up when they get out of that car from that first experience of, oh my God, all the panic that leads up to it, and I survived and that was fun. When can I do it again?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different experiences that you can have in that, and we've had everything from, as Porsche Carrera Cup drivers and Lamborghini Super Trofeo drivers, and we've had people doing their first race, and we want to make sure that we're accommodating for everybody from both sides of those spectrums. We tend to focus on making sure that we deliver a car that's going to be reliable and give these people seat time, because that's what we're there for. And try to be on that, upper middle pack end of it and have a reliable car that's not going to break.
I think that's the cool thing is a lot of times we'll be in races and have newer people in the cars, and just on the fact alone that they're reliable and that they're kind of doing what we tell them to do. We've had, outstanding finishes.
Yeah,
we've been lucky. We've had a couple really hot lineups like a CMP and things like that where you have, a lot of fast guys. But, I don't know. I mean, having done this a long time and you've been around the sport long enough, I find that it's more rewarding to have the new people in the car.
Oh, for sure.
Then, you get out and how was the car? Oh, well, you could have, lowered the ride height 1 millimeter. So, okay, guy, we're racing Miatas here.
Right, yeah. We're on Hancocks here.
But on the flip side of that, too, I think that it goes into a good transition that with the WRL program, and we kind of talked about it in one of our episodes, Champcar, good. I don't want to take anything away from it. I mean, some people take it very seriously, and they should. And I know one of your personal goals is to do very well in Champcar.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the WRL, series, when you get in there, it's a little more serious.
Right.
And, again, we've had some really high caliber drivers in the WRL car. And, again, so I think that the idea that we can take somebody like a Ben, who wants to do a couple more Champcar races, and then maybe one day move them up to WRL, and now we'll have an E46 BMW that can do that. So, I mean, do you feel like that's kind of going to be your bread and butter, is getting people through a program, and then they can go on and do their own thing?
So that's always kind of essentially been our goal with having the track day company and being able to promote people from the upper levels of track day into wheel to wheel. I'm so big on that because I do wish that there was somebody that pushed me to it, 3 years sooner than when I got my start in it. So I kind of want to be that catalyst to get people's foot in the door. You can tend to only want to race the slowest car in the grid for so long before you want to move up a little bit. And we had the E92 GTO car, and there's a pretty big gap between A-Class Champcar and GTO WRL. So we're probably the most excited about adding the E46 into the lineup next year because that's going to be that perfect stepping stone. Both in budget and in pace between the V8 M3s and the with all due respect to the NA Miatas.
I was looking at some time. So we just did HSR. I ran a 2:03, and I think the fastest Miata time we did there was a 24, maybe.
So we haven't gotten into the 20s yet.
Okay. Really? Oh my.
Yeah.
So it's about a 30 second.
We've done a 30 flat.
So it's a 30-second gap essentially between the GTO.
27-second gap between the M3 and about 60 mile an hour.
That's quite a long time. So yeah, but again, and I would The E46 still sliding right there in the middle, probably in the 15 range. So good. So we got kind of a ladder there. All right. So we kind of talked about us being the new Champcar program. What's your bare minimum? So somebody calls and says, Mike, I want to race. What is the bare minimum resume that you're going to look for them to do it?
So typically we're going to look for a intermediate, higher end of intermediate to an advanced driver for HPDE. We're more concerned about the person and how they are in terms of when we communicate them with what their goals are and things of that nature. We want to make sure they have realistic goals for the weekend, which is hop in the car, bring it back in one piece, and kind of get your wings. We're not so much interested in the people that are wanting to go out and set the immediate fastest lap in the car and want to dethrone you as the quick person on the team. We want somebody that's going to be very mechanically sympathetic to the car.
Okay. Yep.
The biggest thing that you'll probably hear me repeat is drive the car like you're the person waiting to get in. If you break the car, then you're going to ruin a lot of other people's day, and that's not going to be a fun weekend for anybody. So more than overall pace, we're looking for somebody that has driver awareness, traffic management abilities, and things of that nature. So for the minimum on a resume, we're definitely open to HPDE drivers, that have been signed off as solo as being good drivers and have, a good foundation of what it takes to be out on a track in like an open passing class, things like that. But we also want to make sure that people kind of take that plunge early. Like I said, I wish somebody had pushed me. I waited way too long to get into wheel-to-wheel racing. Right. And I do wish that there was somebody that showed me how much like a DE it actually is. I mean, some people don't agree with the method, but I mean, like I even point people by when I'm in a slower car on track and race.
Don't do that, guys. Please don't do that.
It's what I'm saying is everybody's kind of on that same page in an endurance race that we're all racing more so against the clock than.
And I think too the thing about that to remember is when you're talking Champcar or a Lemons or a Lucky Dog. This is amateur. This is designed for people that aren't on TV doing it. Exactly. And then and I think in the again and more so I think for you, you might even enjoy that Champcar weekend more than the WRL weekend because of that lower. Again, we're out there having fun.
Correct.
Want to perform well. Don't get me wrong. But when you go to a WRL weekend, it's like we're. Oh, here we go. We got racing against these GT4 cars. You kind of take some pause on that. When you do it.
It's a much more serious weekend, or it feels like it is in WRL. Champcar, it's good, wholesome fun. We're out there with a bunch of Miatas, just trying to push as far forward as we can.
Yeah. So. Okay, I gotta talk a little about the VIR24 because I feel like in our year of fun, this was kind of one of the higher end, fun weekends we've had.
Yeah, that weekend escalated for sure.
So I was racing with their team, and they kind of went and decided to go do some grid life racing with a big name driver. And so I kind of came over to you, and we started. It kind of worked out perfect because again, I had my goal was to get more people racing in this, and so it worked out. Guys like you, Ben, and things like that. So we originally were gonna run 3 cars.
Yep.
And I remember one day we were at a track day, and you're like, "Hey, how many seats have you sold?" Like, I don't know, 6 or 7.
Yep.
And I was like, "How many have you sold?" Like, I don't know. And we put down some, and we're like, we don't have enough cars here. We
Yeah.
literally didn't have enough seats for all the seats. Probably because we both come from automotive.
Yep,
And
yep.
we just always say, yes, come on board. You sound good.
Absolutely.
And so I think you don't realize the first race, we had to basically lease another car.
Correct. And we're actually leasing that car for a second race now. So, yeah, we both were very eager, I think, to give as many people an opportunity
Because we
to drive.
didn't, well, I think we were like, there's no way we're going to
There's
sell
no
all
way.
these seats.
Right.
And we were like, we're going to drive, and Bradley's going to drive, and everyone's going to drive.
20-something seats.
Yeah,
like,
it won't be nothing.
say yes.
And
just keep
I
saying
remember
yes.
when the color left your face, because I think we were like a Roebling, and you took out a pen and was like, I think we got a problem here.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we oversold by like two or three seats, and there's no way.
and
that
it
we're
grew
going
though.
to,
The
yeah.
number grew.
Yeah, so then it was very close. I thought we were going to oversell the fourth car. So yeah, the VIR 24, any 24-hour race, if you have an opportunity to only do one endurance race a year, I think it should be a 24. The range of emotion and highs and lows, and it's just not something that you experience in an 8 to a 14-hour race. It's a completely different animal, and I didn't want to take that away from anybody. So we just kept saying yes until we ultimately had to have a fourth car. So my buddy, who also does the NA Miata rentals, Aaron Ball of Balls Out Racing, he has a car he calls Lucille, we call Ready. That's the one car that's not lime green in our lineup at Champcar. So that is our fourth car, and we take it under our wing, gave it the full open throttle treatment, radio setup, everything. And now that's our car in reserve for when we want to make sure that everybody gets a turn in racing.
So how we set this up was we were very tactical. So I said, Mike, I'll take the new guy car. I think I had the Jay Zilla scholarship winner, which was Wade. I had Ben, my racing protege. We had Lacey. I think we had Jack, and I know I'm forgetting somebody. Nick, who was my friend, who was kind of helped me anchor that car. We had the fast car, which had the son of a racing great, Boris said. And we kind of did lineups. We knew one car would probably be, the car that was going to go set the hot laps.
Yeah.
We had, we didn't want to handicap, a bunch of good guys with a bunch of new guys.
Right.
And I think for the most part, went well. Again, I don't think we talked about it, we didn't have any cars come off the track. Again, and we talked about just having the crew there, but I think it went so well. How many drivers were there, do we think?
I think we had 28 drivers total for the 4 cars.
So there's a picture somewhere of me and you doing the drivers meeting, and we basically have our own drivers meeting that mimics the event drivers meeting.
Yeah, that was we have a dozen crew members to help keep, in a 24-hour race, you can't expect somebody to work a 24-hour shift. So you're staffing for basically 3 races in one. And then throw on top of that, we've got 4 cars. So all it takes is one car having a hiccup the same time another does, and you're shorthanded quick. So yeah, that was a pretty tremendous feat.
You think it was more luck, or you think it was more prep, or a little bit of both?
I think it takes both.
Okay.
It's I always joke I'd rather be lucky than good any day.
Right.
I mean, there's so many opportunities that our race could have ended early through no fault of our own. So it was a combination of both, but we also know what it takes to finish a 24-hour race, and you've got to prep a car with that in mind. Basically anything that's a wearable part needs to be fresh before a 24-hour race, because there's no more grueling test of equipment. So you don't luck into 4 cars finishing in the top 10 in a 24-hour race. I mean, people like Chip Ganassi struggled with that. So it took a lot of prep, a tremendous amount of orders from all of our partners, a lot of support from a bunch of different companies and a lot of people. But yeah, it was a little bit of both. A hell of a lot of prep to the cars, some phenomenal crew, and then we were lucky as shit too.
So, and I don't think either of you guys slept that whole race.
No,
Okay. Well, hospitality is allowed. That's fine. There's only breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
So I did 45 hours straight.
Okay, I remember that because I was there with you, trying to figure out what how were we going to survive then. And I think probably 7:30 in the morning, we looked at each other and I was like, are all these cars really going? Because we were we had contingency plans of who was going to go where, who was going to fix what car. I mean, in a way, I'm almost disappointed we didn't get to see how everyone was going to react, because we had this stuff planned out.
Every race, everybody wants to see a little bit of drama.
Yeah,
it can be kind of boring. But,
and so, I remember we, at least in our car, I think we had to fix the ball joint, and these guys did it like in 10 minutes.
Yeah, right on pit lane.
Didn't even sleep
Didn't even come off pit lane, eyeballed the alignment, and finished the race.
Yeah.
P7,
Nick
I think, for that car.
Me, and he was like, "The car is somehow better."
Yeah,
yeah, like it's faster.
Yeah, that was. We replaced some components from the. We had a spare entire front subframe assembly, so we just brought it down to pit lane and took what was bent from its little off-track excursion.
So knowing you as long as I have, known you since your track day days and things like that, Mike Gorman's known to be very frugal on certain things. You put federal tires on the map.
Yep.
They should send you some money for you're doing time trials on federals and doing
we
well.
were podiums in time trials.
So you've always been a little frugal, but so I've seen something switch in you, at least in the past year, team ownership. You don't buy anything used. You buy new parts. You buy brand name parts. I'm running parts all the time from OEM, from Mazda, from BMW. So, why do you think that is that your again, is that why you think these cars are running so well? Just because you've been doing everything correctly? Or?
Absolutely. Just maintain for what we ask of these cars. The least we can do is give it the best chance of success. It's. I want the only reason that we don't finish a race to be something that maybe a driver did. I don't want it to be a mechanical issue that stops everybody's race weekend.
Right.
And you can plan a pretty picnic, but you can't predict the weather. And we've seen that a couple of times this year, but it's not from silly failures types of things. We continue to develop each chassis with every race, and we don't want to give ourselves any reason why we didn't finish a race that we could have prevented.
So, Amy, I'll ask you this because, what people don't realize is, so Friday, Saturday, Sundays, race weekend. But I think there's a lot that goes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, before the race weekend. So, I mean,
we're literally smoking a brisket right now for NOLA. We've got a brisket that just came off.
So, how much of that, going to team ownership, is, again, I've kind of been a part of it where, like, there's invoices that need to get sent out. The administrative part of owning a race team, were you guys ready for all of that? Did some of that come as a shock, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We had planned on developing this company through this whole year, and
right.
then it ended up being he had to choose between the two way earlier than we thought we would be, so we weren't ready. So we got to-do list we're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. The admin, it's one, like you said, it's one thing to have a car that finishes a race. The whole other side of things, the marketing aspect, the admin aspect, making sure that the money's still coming in to support the operation. You can't downplay acquiring parts and cars and parts cars, and it's a lot more than what we anticipated, and that's that kind of part of that scalability that you don't realize until you're in the middle of it.
Well, and again, and for the most part, that administrative stuff is just you two guys, So it's really just obviously you got Bradley and some of the guys in the shop working on the cars and Jeremiah and things like that, but when it comes to collecting money, sending money, doing all that, it's just you guys doing it. So that's and so that I think that's pretty awesome. All right, let's talk about money a little bit. And so, Mike, you're notoriously famous for this. You're very upfront with the cost of seats.
Absolutely, and to a fault, I think, in some people's opinion. But just myself as a consumer, if I'm going to consider a product, I want to know how much that product costs. I don't understand why it's kind of a hidden concept.
Yeah.
Unless it's a variable price, depending on who asks. But yeah, just transparency. That's not something I think that needs to be hidden. If you're going to budget out how many races you can do for a year, it really helps if you know how much those races cost. And we are in certain aspects of an ad leader style of pricing for some of our cars for the series in which we're running in. And it's kind of about that accessibility.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to do what they want to do as far as the car goes, as far as the racing series goes. And we want to be just very transparent with that. So yeah, we disclose our pricing. Goes everywhere from $1,650 up to about $7,500 for the M3 in certain races, and we just want people to know what they're kind of getting into. And
well, and I think that again, and we should get some full disclosure. So $1,650, let's say, is your beginning Champcar seat. It's not uncommon in Champ. I think I've been seeing ads for like $4,500 a weekend for a Champcar seat.
I've seen some of those popping up.
Yeah, and I've seen in WRL to race in GTO, and we'll talk a little more of this in a second. But you could literally spend $15,000 a week on a WRL seat. So you're kind of on that lower end entry level seat there. So okay, so I've been doing a bunch of DEs. I'm a DE4 driver. I'm an advanced crew driver. I call Mike and say, hey Mike, I want to do X race, let's say Sebring, and you say it's 1650, whatever. Obviously there's some variance on what track it is. What does that get me?
So that's going to be basically what you're going to pay for the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We're all inclusive in the regard of your hospitality, your race entry, fuel, tires, brakes, all consumables. Everything is included in that 1,650 number. We've seen other teams that will split out fuel costs and things like that, and it's when you're running the number of cars that we are, it's pretty easy to have an idea of what a race weekend is going to cost between those cars. So we want to make everything all inclusive. So that's going to have breakfast, lunch, and in some cases dinner, depending on the format of the race. We want to keep everybody fed. We keep everybody hydrated. It's you basically show up with your gear. And you need to have your own safety gear. A competent driver history. And some cash, and then of course you brought up a great point on one of your previous episodes. It's not just the cost of the entry, but the cost of what can happen in the event that you bend the car. I mean, you do need to be prepared to write a check for the total amount for the car. So that's the main criteria.
And so for like 1650, I mean, how much seat time can somebody expect?
So typically you're going to get about 3 to 3.5 hours of seat time in a race for that price point. We try to get as close to 2 hours as possible, and it's also going to depend on the race format. Some races are 7 hours, some are 10 and a half for some reason, 12, 14, all the way up to 24 hours. So it's kind of a moving target as to how many drivers. We want to make sure that people are maximizing the seat time. And so we want to get everybody at least 2 stints in the car, a stint being, one time for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on race conditions. So that 1650 will typically include 2 stints in the car.
Right.
If there's a practice, there may be an optional ad for adding practice in, depending on the race format. And then, like I said, all consumables, everything like that are included. So, you show up to the track with your gear, everything ready to go. You can pretty much assume somewhere between 3 and 4 hours of race time during that period of time. We've had people that have done more, basically bought 2 seats. So it's entirely up to the driver how much they want to get out of it.
And then let's talk about WRL for a second. So I think we need to spend a little more time on this, and just full disclosure. So the M3 that we have we run in GTO is probably one of the handful of still street legal cars there is. And so, I think we can just, there's no sugarcoating. I mean, that car is, well driven is probably a mid pack. If you get lucky, maybe a higher pack car. But that's reflected in the price. We talked about $7,500 basically for a GTO seat. When an M4 is probably $12,000 and up, a TCR is probably $12,000 and up, a Cayman is probably $10,000 to $12,000, an M2 same thing. So this is a way to get into the GTO field. At possibly half the cost, of that. And so what do you generally run, a 4-driver lineup?
We're typically running a 4-driver lineup in WRL. We find that works well for, again, maintaining that price point, to give people that GTO battle experience, for, in a lot of cases, a GP2 or GP1 seat cost. We know that the car is not necessarily going to be battling for a podium position at most races unless we have a lot of things that go in our favor. But the car's, pace is still there. I mean, the car's running a couple of seconds off of your front-running GT4 times in qualifying, and we're typically about that same gap around in race pace, and that leads to some pretty incredible battles for the price point in that car.
Well, I mean, and I think, too, it goes, again, I mean, every time we run that car, I know I've qualified the car at Daytona and I think Road Atlanta, we were qualified ahead of GT4 cars. I mean, this is, so this is not, again, it's not like we're 2 seconds off the pace of everyone else, So you're front running literally IMSA teams that are running WRO. We probably wouldn't even be there in the same car just because of the quality, of drivers that are in those cars. But for that kind of price point, you're going to be able to get in it. And I think we were 11th at Road Atlanta.
We finished 11th and 12th at Road Atlanta. We
probably should have been top 10. We had a couple hiccups there. So, I mean, you will be battling there. But, what a good way to get into a paddle shift. V8, GTO style car.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience in that car. I mean, you've driven it quite a bit.
Probably as much as you now, So
it sounds incredible. The feedback from the car is great, and like you said, it's flappy paddle gearbox car. It's a home built GT4 car. That makes a little NASCAR noise.
Okay, so. Again, before we move on from that, it goes into a good segue. So the red M3, another E92 M3 you guys acquired, same thing, DCT V8.
Yep.
So you're building this car to a GP1 spec.
Correct.
And so almost like the green car, minus the aero.
Yep, minus the aero, minus some power, plus a couple pounds. So the original intent with the green car was to put it into GP1, and what kind of fell apart with that is when we looked at the modifications that we would have to turn down or take off of the car. We'd built that car originally as a time trial car, so when you start having to point modifications, it's not going to reflect too well on that. So that's kind of what pushed that car into GTO. The red car, the GP1 car, is also going to be green ultimately, but as of now, people know it as the red M3 you drift around.
Yeah.
That was a car that we're building to GP1 specifically. So we're building that car with a particular class in mind. So it's allowing us to kind of target a particular end result with that car, going into it with a blank slate. So, that we're really excited about bringing that car to GP1. I think it's going to do very well against a bunch of other.
Well, and I think too with that car, one of the key ingredients of that is some of the renters we've had throughout this year. You're going to try to have the same lineup. So even though it's arrive and drive, it's kind of like the same guys every weekend, so you can kind of mold and gel that team. So, I'm excited to see that car. So I think that's gonna do well. So
it's gonna be a fun one.
And so next year, obviously GTO, green car, GP1, and the second M3, and then some GP. We're thinking GP3 or GP2.
We're thinking GP3 is where
I guess we'll
the
find
E40.
out before first race.
We had the same intentions with the Miata. We saw it that way, but now the intentions to run GP3 in that car. Kind of similar formula to the Red E92, where we're going to focus on having a little bit of a heavier weight car to be able to fit in that lower class, which I think should be a good recipe for both of those cars. And then, of course, we'll be running the E46 double duty as it'll be running in Champcar at select races too.
Which is another car I just dropped off at your house.
Yeah, that's another car that you just dropped off at the house.
So a couple cool stories. I guess we'll kind of go over. I think looking back, so earlier this year when you just caged the M3, it was like, well, we need to test this car somewhere. Yep. So we found this organization in South Florida, PBOC.
Yep.
Good local sports car club.
Great organization.
Great. Little laid back, which is our style.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that what people should realize is a lot of these cars, we've done a lot of research and development on these cars.
Yeah.
I mean, we've raced them ourselves, and
absolutely.
I think one of the cool stories, what you find out with like a United TM3 is stock. They have single piston brake calipers.
Yep.
Something I would have never guessed, and we found this out how.
We found out that they got a little warm.
They did,
after some laps, and after a couple of thoughts of using the fire extinguisher on pit lane, we realized, that's a single piston caliper.
Yep.
And it's on fire.
So we'd run that car pretty heavily as a track car for 6 years or so before turning it into a wheel-to-wheel car. But what we hadn't done is run it with a driver that has IMSA credentials for a period of like 2 hours straight. So we quickly found out that the limit on the stock braking system is somewhere around that 2.5 hour mark at Sebring, and we had to use my first fire extinguisher on our car.
So I'll tell you the funny story about that. We were leading our class. Yeah. I'm already thinking the speech when we're all getting our podium. Things are going swell. The car is doing great, and we came first stop refuel, and about like 2 laps later, I'm going into the heaven like, man, these brakes are getting really soft. Like, we have a big lead. Let me just take it in. Maybe we got to do a pad change. And as I was coming down pit lane, I saw the fire truck hit the lights and start following me.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, that's new.
Yeah.
That's a little interesting. I was like, maybe he's going somewhere. So I pull into the box, and I see you two guys like just frantically like this.
Yeah.
And all I could hear was Ben with the fire, and I could hear you screaming, hit it, just hit it.
So, I mean, God, if you've spent any amount of time at the track, you've probably seen a car catch on fire at some point. As shitty of an experience as that is, it's probably something that you've witnessed. And I had all of that flashing before my eyes as I saw this little flame coming from the passenger caliper of my wife's still E92 M3. And, I hit it once with the fire extinguisher because, I know how quickly stuff can get much worse and, fluids and all there. So I hit it with the fire extinguisher, and then the fire came back, and that scared me. So we finally got everything out. Then we had to wait, per Sebring, we had to wait like 25 minutes or something like that.
And the whole time, I have no one's on the radio with me, and I'm like, what is going on? What are you guys doing?
We were occupied at the time.
No, you're a little occupied.
We were trying to judge how bad a fire was.
I was like, should I get out of the car? I should probably get out of the car at this point,
It was so funny because, like you said, it was a very tiny flame.
Yeah.
And so at first I just lifted up my visor and I tried to blow it out. I did not want to use the fire extinguisher.
They're $80. Bring it back to the frugal aspect. It's an $80 fire extinguisher.
It was going to be a really big deal for you to use the fire extinguisher which
Yeah.
it was because the
By the
fire
time you
guys-
get the fire guys were catching up to
the
me.
fire guys
Yeah.
were, like wrunning, they're waving their arms because maybe they weren't happy with the substance of that fire extinguisher.
Yeah, I don't. That was.
They wanted us to use a different one.
That was. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. So we found the limit of the brakes.
Yeah.
So from there, we upgraded to the AP Racing.
$6,000 later.
$6,000 later, we got 28 millimeters of pad, and we've been able to do quite a few longer than 2-hour sessions on those pads.
So some cool research and development, so we kind of got that there. All right, so we've been racing a year now. What is your proudest moment? Like when you look back, or give me a couple. Like what are some of the races? Like, man, this was really cool. I really enjoyed this. Now I ask both you guys that.
Positive and negative. So at Road Atlanta,
Yeah.
the first Champcar race of the year, when we had to swap a motor in the parking lot, that wasn't cool, but it was a very proud moment. We managed to in a 14-hour race swap a motor and take checkers after getting 3 or 4 hours of race time in. Finishing 4 cars at VIR, obviously, I mean, just pinnacle moment. You can't even really comprehend that. Getting our first bit of first place hardware at CMP with the Dream Team, that was an incredible experience as well. And then, God, from me as a driver perspective, doing HSR, doing the race at HSR and kind of taking the team owner hat off for a minute and putting a driver helmet on was a pretty incredible experience as well. So I'd say those are probably in no particular order. My peak moments of this past year.
For sure.
What about you, Amy?
Yeah,
What look about?
Oh,
That ice cream at like whatever it was, 11 o'clock in the afternoon at VIR after 23
It's
hours of
really,
racing.
it's really. I mean, yeah. I mean, I remember you brought the ice cream. And I was like, oh my god, there's ice cream,
Yeah.
and we're all preoccupied for about 15 minutes, and like. Has anyone checked on the cars? Like, are the people still?
We forgot we had 4 cars running out on track because everybody was on an ice cream break.
I had to get pictures of that because everybody was
I know.
so
I mean, the
Yeah.
cars all could have came in. We would have not been prepared.
Not
So-
at all. Nobody had a fire suit on because we were all eating ice cream.
All right, let's talk about toughest moments. Again, it's
VIR, VIR this year, WRL,
WRL.
at the
Yep.
M3. Yeah, we
Wasn't
had
that wild going from 4 cars? You think
Yeah.
you come back a couple weeks later with one
Right,
car?
yeah. It was 3 weeks later. We ran 4 cars for 24 hours, not a single hiccup, and then 1 car that just was kind of a thorn in our side for the weekend. And we tried to keep the car out on track as much as possible, but that was a rough one for us. Yeah, that was. It's peaks and valleys just in any other venture of life, and that was a valley, and it sucked because in the other car, in the GP2 car,
we had
we took a podium, and it definitely shadowed that the issues that we had. I mean, we had a differential eat itself that weekend. We had an axle eat itself. We had alternator issue, a voltage regulator, and a relay. So things that are not necessarily on a maintenance schedule that can really kind of cost a race weekend. And yeah, that was a rough one. So that was the worst. Probably really the only bad day that we've had out there. I know as crazy as it sounds, but that was the one where it sucked. That was a shitty day.
And to that point, I will say all those issues were repaired, and that car did take the checkers.
We did,
so,
yeah.
I mean, which is again, it's a small consolation, but it's not
correct.
Like
We're not patting ourselves on the back for that race, but we did take checkers. We got the car back running. After we got the diff swapped and got the electrical issues sorted. I mean, the car was running really good after that. And then its next race after that was Sebring, which aside from a couple of hiccups, I mean, the car did phenomenal. Yeah. So yeah, we recovered from that, but that was for sure the toughest weekend of the year was VIR specifically for that reason.
All right, so Ben, I know you kind of had this on your notes. So renters,
yeah. So we talked about this a little bit last episode, and you've been doing this for like a year now, and you had like 28 renters at VIR. So what would kind of make a bad renter, one that you don't want to invite back? And I believe that's an important question because someone who's looking to rent, they don't want to mess up. They want to be invited back. They don't want to be blacklisted.
You'll hear me harp on it nonstop. Mechanical sympathy and heads-up driving. Those are the 2 things that we look at the most, and how much you're looking after the car. We've had drivers that have, for a period of an hour and a half, driven the car bouncing off a red line. Ignoring temperature gauges. What caused us to replace the motor at Road Atlanta at a 30-degree race was we were hitting 330-degree oil temperatures, and they came from not looking after the car, and that's a very frustrating thing to watch, especially watching the video back. I mean, You try not to have too much of an emotional attachment to the cars, but watching somebody just beat on your car like that, it was.
Especially all the work that
it was.
the team
Yeah,
puts in,
absolutely.
you
I
put
mean,
into the prep.
that was a tough stint to watch. So what I'm looking for in a renter is somebody that's going to take care of the car. Like it's their piece of equipment. They understand what the big picture of what we're trying to do, as far as finish the race and finish as far forward as possible. And not that setting fast laps doesn't matter, but the most important thing is setting consistent laps and not making mistakes. Drivers that focus on asking what they can be doing to help. I mean, we bring full crew, but there's always something that somebody could be doing to help. Those are all things that we look for in renters, and people are fun to be around. People that have good personalities that mesh well with the team. I mean, we do have a fun, laid back environment, and we like to keep it that way. And people that have a goal of finishing the race and doing better for themselves.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we look for in a renter. Somebody that's mechanically sympathetic and somebody that's got a team attitude for sure.
Well, and I think too, I mean, just in private conversations, we've had good drivers take care of the car, but again, there's personality things too, and if they're not getting along, with other drivers, and particularly the crew, that's a huge thing for me. That's
the quickest way to get on our do not fly list is by having any type of rudeness or disrespect, which we haven't really had that issue at all. But the crew are the reason why we're all able to do this and have the fun time and that we do. And I don't tolerate that at all in the slightest. So want to make sure you're taking care of the crew and make sure that you're taking care of the equipment too.
All right. So speaking of the equipment, I kind of want to talk about this because I don't know how this has happened, but people have learned the names of the cars.
Yeah.
So, so for instance, Frankie, kind of a cool story. This was my old Champcar. We had finished Champcar probably 15, the 24 hours of VR. Put this car in a trailer, never took it back out ever, for 6 years. And finally one day I was like, hey, we gotta do something with this trailer. It's falling apart. So I basically dropped off a Champcar operation in your front yard.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about this is any given race weekend, I'll see tools from wait, I remember that buggy. I remember that screwdriver.
Yep.
And so you inherited Frankie, and you guys got that car cranked. And running.
All new body panels. I mean, all new. We basically did a full rehab on Frankie, and it's been a wonderful car for us. So Frankie did become the new driver car experience vehicle. And it's wild to see the condition of that car and how great a shape it's still in after a year when the others have all had their kind of bumps and bruises. Some issues.
Well, maybe it speaks to the fact that the new drivers have just much more caution.
Bring them all on.
And then there's Kermit, which was your original race
was
car.
The OG. Yep. Kermit just started out as a spec Miata that we bought, threw some aero on it, threw some cooling on it, and that was the car that we brought to WRL. We've got Specs.
Right.
Specs is a two-tone green and black car that delivered us our first Champcar win at CMP this year. Actually, two of them. We won
allegedly,
both days.
that is the fastest car.
That is allegedly the fastest car around the track.
There's some suspicion about that.
So we've, part of the cool part about having your own track day company is you get access to a racetrack and you get to do kind of whatever you want to do, whether it's tracking F-250 rental trucks or doing the world's greatest drag race with 4 NA Miatas. And Kermit's got the drag record for sure. But they're all pretty identically prepped cars, and they all run most of the same components on them. Just makes it a lot easier on us from a servicing standpoint. But they all have their own names, their own personalities, and they all kind of have their own following. I know Ben is Team Frankie. I know you're Team Frankie as well.
Frankie, because it's the first car I crewed.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So
I
love
Kermit.
The full circle about that is Ben was Champcar. Maybe 15, I forget the year, whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, he crewed on that car. Yeah. He was fueling that car when I was running my Champcar team by myself. Me and a couple friends, and he got to drive that car years later. So it's really, really a cool story how that kind of came around. It's funny. So Viagra, we had our A car, which was the fast car. It had a bunch of, really, really...
Had some heavy hitters in
Had some heavy hitters in it. And in the middle of the night, they're all like, you're not taking care of the car. Look at these lap times. This is the fastest lap. And me and Ben are like, don't let him know Frankie was 2 seconds quicker. Then they're going to be really pissed off. So,
it's Frankie. It's interesting. Frankie will pull
Frankie
out the
has some heart. Has some heart in that car.
Frankie's got good suspension, and more importantly, it's got the pedigree that we talk about all the time.
I love that car. It drove fantastic.
Yeah. It's a wonderful car.
Maybe
I have a love-hate with that car because that car should have won the 24 Hours of IR in 2014. And with
It
45,
should have won CMP also.
It should have won CMP. Yeah. So we need to touch on that because I didn't hit anything on that.
So we joke that we car prep is everything, and we're real big on our finish ratio, right? Whether or not we had to swap a motor in the parking lot, we're taking checkers. I don't care what we got to do. We're gonna do it, and that's what I love about our crew. They're all just as crazy. We had a 2-minute lead, I believe, at CMP. We've got our star driver in the car, and he does the race start. I mean, we even draw a pole,
I think we lapped. We were up to the point where we were lapping. we're to like 5th.
Yep, we have about a lap on most of the A-class field. We've got over a 2-minute lead at CMP, and we haven't put a foot wrong all day. And then Gino delivers us our first DNF, first and only DNF of the year.
Let me tell you. So we have a good lead, and I'm thinking I probably need to build on this lead a little more, because
we're destroying everybody.
We really need to be. And so the cool thing about that car is it has no lap time, so I have no idea how fast I'm going.
That's by design. We'll talk
so I'm
about
thinking,
that later
I'm
too.
thinking, I'm probably going a little too slow. So let me just see if I can pick it up, and I had a slide off. I'm like, I'm like, okay, this is not good. And next thing I know, the motor's overheating.
Yeah. So during that slide off, when in the beginning of the year we were running 9 lives full splitters, and we love them for the performance. They're incredible. But when you throw, sometimes 28 different random people in a car, that car is gonna go off roading a couple of times throughout a race weekend.
So better me. So I'll take the hit for it. And so now that car's got a new motor, courtesy of me buying one from Isaac, and
Isaac came through
a really good radiator. It's got the best radiator, I assure you, of all the cars. I know it does, because I bought it.
Yeah, that was how you can turn a simple off with not hitting anything.
It's an expensive day,
of damage.
But I'll tell you, I think the cool thing, and we kind of joke about it, is you learn from every. We haven't had the same issue or breakage or failure twice this year.
Yeah.
I can't think. So every time something. So in this case, we're like, hey, these splitters are fantastic for time trials, but if I can go off and I don't make a lot of driving mistakes. If I go off and have an issue, well, a lot of these new guys are, and I think we counted multiple offs at VIR, which I think a lot of those we'd have had that issue.
Yeah.
So you gotta learn kind of from what we have. And
So took the performance hit on it for the longevity of it, and that's for sure I think was the right decision, because I don't know that we would have had that same result with 4 cars after 24 hours at VIR.
So one of the issues I have with you, and I'd let it be known, is you're really not holding your end of the bargain up, because when you started doing this, you're like, hey, I'm going to own this team. I'll get to drive a lot. And you haven't got to drive, not for lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're driving less as an owner?
So, there's a couple things that go into that. One, it's funny, we were in a meeting in Sebring for WRL, and RJ mentioned something to the effect of the owner getting in the car and being about 5 or 6 seconds lap off pace from everybody else. That resonated with me a bit, but there's just so much going on in a race weekend, and the race for the drivers typically starts on Saturday, and the race for us starts on Monday. I mean, there's a lot to get done, and there's just a lot of things that have to be in order, and we have to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of juggling. So it makes it difficult for me to kind of take myself away from that and get in the car for 2 hours and have any amount of focus on the task at hand. The premise was that, man, this is a great way to supplement the cost of racing. I'll be able to race all the time. Every other weekend I'll be in a race car. I am, but it's pulling it on and off the trailer. That's the extent of the driving I do now. So I've had the opportunity to take a couple of races this year. Doing the fun extracurricular races with you, and like PBOC and HSR and stuff like that, has kind of given me that opportunity to get back behind the wheel. But it was probably about the second or third race of running with multiple cars where I'm like, there's just no way. There's no way I'm going to be able to get into a car on a race weekend unless it's to take checkers.
Yeah. And even that you don't like, because when you have another car running, you're always worried.
Yeah.
Even though, let's be honest, there's probably not a lot you can do because you got such
good
people. It's just I think you wanted to be there to figure out how you can help.
Yeah, I don't contribute much. I feel like I don't contribute much to the crewing aspect of the car anymore, but you still kind of feel like you need to be there, and it's tough to focus on the task at hand of driving when you've got the moving puzzles of having 20 some odd drivers or 4 cars or whatever. You just want to make sure everything runs smooth. So the driving took a back seat to making sure everybody else is having a good time.
So we kind of talk about, so it was important to me, again, when I saw what was happening, I was like, hey, we're going to do a couple events here, me and you, or, me and you, a couple other people that are less about renting the car out and more about having fun. So one of those obviously was PBOC, which we, again, that was the first, I think it's cool because that was the first real race ever for that car. And so, me and you got to do it, and that was probably some of the most fun I ever had, minus the fire and the brake issue and not winning, even though we should have won.
Correct. There's always the next year.
But again, me and you have been through some very interesting tech, situations in the past year. We've been through some very interesting drivers meetings. We've been to the wrong drivers meeting at an event once.
True.
So I like that. But one of the big ones for me, I've always wanted, even though I've run, at IMSA and Daytona, being a Florida native, every year, again, kind of like you, we'd shut the store, we'd run down and watch HSR, which, started, 2014, 2015. And so I remember earlier this year, like, I think this car will fit in the catch-all class.
Yep.
And kind of the year went on, things, and we kind of forgot about this, and we kind of reignited this a couple months ago. Like, hey, listen, we need to run this. The issue was the HSR 24 was we had to be there the Wednesday after Sebring, the 16 hours of Sebring, which kind of it was a good race for us, but we had some mechanical issues that
sure.
So again, I want to talk a little bit about HSR, how we kind of both checked out the bucket list, but talk about that turnaround. So 16 hours or whatever it is, 16.
Yeah. So we had a couple of. We do keep. We have a whole nother car, so we can pretty much rob anything that we need to rob, and we did that for this race, of course. Unfortunately, poor Cherry Limeade, our new GP1 car. But yeah, so we had a 2-day turnaround time from Sebring, and Sebring, historically pretty hard on a track. Will jar a car, especially a heavier car. So we had a couple issues. We sheared some studs. We had a wheel come off during a turn 7 braking scenario. And then we also had a sway bar end link, an SPL end link that decided that it wanted to shear. And then when that sway bar drooped, it kind of did some more damage as well. It took out an axle and all these other things. So that's the scenario that we had on Sunday. It's okay, great. We've got to be in tech line on Wednesday at Daytona. So Letty Motorsports overnighted us some SPL end links, got us the parts that we needed. I called Alex Chambers with AFP, came and wrapped the whole side half of the car because we got to look pretty for HSR. So we got the car turned around in about we could have been there Tuesday, honestly. We could have been there Tuesday night if we needed.
My whole concern was like, hey, listen, I know they got the car done, but the car had some rough race, and I'm like, man, we're going to be on this really big audience, and that car is going to look a little beat up. So how you guys wrap that car basically in a day is pretty cool.
Yeah, wrapped it in a day, aligned, axle. We did quite a bit of maintenance on that car, and Jeremiah, a lot of people in the Jacksonville BMW community know Jeremiah. He's our right-hand man for BMW stuff. Just came and knocked out everything in the morning, and it goes back to that crew of people that we've got. That's a turnaround time that's not realistic from finishing 16 hours at Sebring to then slapping the car on the World Center of Racing and in front of a crowd of people. Yeah,
so HSR Daytona, for those guys that aren't, again, even though this is based on amateur racing, HSR, historic racing, older cars have a place to kind of go race. This car is really not historic, obviously, but again, there is classes for newer, cars. So first off, I should say this car at Daytona is like, if there's one car you could drive, if you can drive one track, one car, this is pretty high up there. That the first race for this car was Daytona WRL for as far as our WRL program. I got to start. You let me start the race there, which was actually my first GTO start, which was kind of cool. A lot of people didn't realize that even though I've been racing in IMSA and been doing a lot of the other stuff, I've never been able to drive in GTO. We had an M2, but never really got the chance to drive it. So first ever GTO start was in that car, which I really enjoyed. That was a good time. So to be able to kind of go back and drive that, the car again was super fun. But for you, bucket list item also.
Yeah.
Kind of explain that whole weekend. I feel like it went about as good as it could be.
Yeah, for sure.
Not for a Ferrari, but as good as it could be for us. So let's talk a little bit about HSR and what a good time that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been going to HSR as a spectator for forever.
As long as it's happened,
as long as it's been going on, and it always kind of seemed like the pinnacle of obtainable
Right.
motorsports for me. Like I feel like if I dedicate some stuff to this, I could potentially rent a seat in this race or what have you. It was that obtainable life goal for you, and to see that kind of come together, and especially with the car that we did it in. We've owned that car for so long, and it's been such a great car to us. It was a pretty neat experience. So yeah, the whole thing, the hospitality that HSR puts on, the driver's lounge, being out in the test session with some of the most unbelievable hardware.
Yeah.
I mean, getting passed by a Mercedes SLS GT3 is, just you can't put a price on that type of stuff. $2,800.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't put a price on it.
Not cheap. It's not particularly cheap racing.
No, it is not dollar for dollar seat time. HSR is not quite the same.
I think it's always funny though, because me and you kind of have that same. We'll just figure out when we get there.
Right. Yeah.
So like we go to these organizations and we're like, they're like, "Do you know the rules?" No.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
You got a copy?
We know how to get around a track safely.
Yeah,
we're not
know.
the people
Yeah, but I mean, so I think for me that was probably one of the. I got to start the race, and you were on the radio, and I feel like you were almost more excited about being up there.
Oh, for sure.
So we're chasing down the leader, and you're like on the radio, like, Gino, you're 0.001 seconds away from the leader. I'm like, I know, Mike. I'm pushing around the track. So like you were more excited than I was. As far as so I really being in the car. I got the video from from that event. It's like probably for me one of my favorite drives ever was getting to start that race. But one of the other things was when you went in for your stint. Again, talking about I don't know if we ever had the chance again to race the Ferrari Challenge car around Daytona nonstop for an hour.
Yeah, that was probably the best battle. I mean, not probably. That was without a doubt the best battle and most fun I've ever had behind the wheel of a car.
So, put in perspective, we're competitive all race. You get in for your hour session to begin the race. There's a Ferrari 430 challenge car.
360 challenge car.
360 challenge car. Yeah, that we're racing for position, and you're trying to get by him for your whole stint. And I'm on the radio with you. I'm like, "Oh, Mike, we gotta try this. Try getting a run." And towards the end of the session, so I'm with Ben. We're in the Supra at the Horseshoe, and I go, "Mike, we got 2 to go. He's getting sloppy. Come on, and just get a run through the Horseshoe." And you come on the radio and you say, "I'm trying, but I can't hit him again." And no one says anything. I look at Ben and say, "Did he just say hit him again?" He said, "Yeah, I think so." And I didn't say anything else after that because I'm thinking, "Oh no, he just hit a Ferrari."
So yeah, that's my first ever car-to-car contact.
If you're gonna hit one, hit a Ferrari.
Ferrari challenge car. So some context: this Ferrari, and I'll get the video up at some point soon. This Ferrari and I had been having arguably the best battle that either of us have had in a significant amount of time, and we were having a blast. I mean, he was defensive as hell, closing the door, and our cars are so comparably paced that it was very difficult for me to get any type of run on him without him shutting the door. So we're coming through the S's, and I make up a lot of ground in braking on him. But he's got us a little bit on acceleration coming out of corners, sticker slicks or whatever that situation may be. He got off the corners a little bit better than us. So he lifts coming out of the S's and then swings wide going in international horseshoes. So at this point we've been battling for 20-25 minutes of bumper to bumper.
I'm on the radio riding cars, and we gotta get by.
This is a team effort. This is we all want to get around this car. We got my wife doing photography. We got a guy on the radio. We're all invested in getting around this Ferrari, and finally I see this opportunity present itself. So I do what I do, and you've been on the other end of this before.
Course, yeah.
I go in for a little dive bomb going in international horseshoe, and right when I get to his quarter panel, he decides that he wants to close the door on me, and it was a very ambitious move. But a little love tap, and then we both got right back on the throttle. When we came off track, I mean, we continued to battle for another 25 minutes after that. He came off track, and very important for me to get some type of communication with him, like, "Hey, sorry about that. We're cool, right?
Sorry, just hit your
Ferrari going in international horseshoe with a little overzealous move." But he was cool. We chatted afterwards, and we both agreed that was some of the best racing. No harm, no foul. But yeah, that was definitely a case of getting kind of a little impatient, and we were obviously a little bit quicker than him, but I just couldn't kind of put it together and ended up connecting with him slightly.
Well, and again, just to lay it out, even though we were in a catch-all class, there was like a Shelby Cobra racing, a slew of TCRs,
home-built GT3 Porsche,
I mean, I know a bunch about the TCR cars, so like it's weird being on the other end of having power and racing those cars.
Everybody's automatic from WRL.
The Aston was there, so cool event. I mean, got expensive event, but I think we're gonna try to do it again next year.
We're gonna come back with more cars to offset.
We're gonna go back to PBOC next year.
I'd like to point out there was an NA Miata, and
there was.
I know,
and we were all rooting for
opportunity. for some
well, how much has it been? $2,800 if you want to.
$6,000 seat NA Miata at Daytona. That should be an easy sell.
Awesome, Ben. Well, I knew you had a couple others on your list for the Gormans here.
Yeah, a lot of them kind of got touched on, but I think one that's kind of important is, you've obviously achieved a lot, from starting the track days and then going into racing. So what are your ambitions for Open Throttle? Like, what are your future goals? Do you want to continue to keep it as, an entry level, with some WRL stuff, or do you... what are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We should probably have about 2 cup cars. That
we talked about this quite a bit. Yeah. So we talked about this quite a bit, obviously, and for sure next year we're going to focus on the lineup that we have. We've got now 3 solid cars for Champcar, 3 solid cars for WRL, and then we'll have backups for kind of each one of those categories. But ultimately, we want to get back into some sort of Porsche car. I mean, we joked that I turned my 2017 911 into 3 Mazda Miata race cars, and it was the best trade I've ever made. But we
some days I don't think so. I love that blue car.
That was a great car. But it's allowed us to give a lot of people an opportunity to get behind the wheel of a race car, and allowed us to create this business that we enjoy doing so much. And I don't want to count anything out, but I mean, we're going to continue to do the growth in Champcar and WRL, continue running these cars for at least the next 1.5 or 2 years, and then hopefully look to expand into some Porsche racing and a little bit higher level of racing with cup cars. And then also I'd like to do more of that fun stuff, like more HSR style of weekends, because WRL, it's a lot of fun, but there was such a unique element to doing that HSR style of event that's just kind of that lifetime memory, and I kind of want to give some other people the opportunity to experience that as well. So I'd like to see us do some more HSR, some more specialty 25 hours of Thunderhill style
we got that
events.
coming up.
And then we'll go from there. Maybe get something in Europe, who knows.
Yeah, well, that's a little tougher to you're gonna need more than your dually to get there, just so you know. I think as we kind of get to a wrap up, it's funny. When I always thought of Mike Gorman, I think of Mike in a suit that's not quite fitted correctly, behind your finance office at the Porsche store. And now I think of you going over the wall, cleaning windshields, and driving your dually truck that you don't really fit in too well. So, I mean, it's to anyone thinking about starting a team. Obviously, you've done this to be a business, but there's a lot of guys that do this and want to start a team with a couple buddies. I mean, what would be your tips to somebody that wants to do this for fun and start a team, having done this and actually turn this into a business?
You have to make sure that you've got the right ingredients for people. Before we started doing this as a business aspect, we tried a couple of times with build a couple of efforts to build cars with groups of buddies, but over the course of the time it takes to build a car, if you're not focused on doing it, as a business, people do kind of change their mind about things and kind of fall away from the original goal. And after having that happen a couple of times, we really just wanted to eliminate that variable and just get rocking and rolling with something on our own. But I really think that those groups and those teams probably have the most fun, throughout a race weekend. You're racing with the same group of people for the entire season. I think there's a lot to be said for that camaraderie of friends. So I'd just say jump into it. I mean, if you guys want to rent, a whole car for a race and kind of see how you guys all gel together in a race scenario, we've done that for multiple people. I think that most people don't realize that they have a car that they can turn into a race car,
right.
and I don't think people realize kind of how attainable it is. As long as you're surrounding yourself with the right people and the right motivation factor to see that goal out. There's a lot of unfinished race car projects for sale at any given time. Jump on one with your group of friends, finish the car up, and enter a race. It's not as hard to do as a lot of people make it out to be in their head in terms of getting a car to a race.
Gotcha. Well, and let me, again, just it's funny. I think a lot of people will compliment you guys as a couple in the paddock, because I remember I had a runner once, and I forget who it was. He comes like, man, and Mike's wife, she's really into this. She's over the wall refueling the car and things like that. So, advice for racer. I mean, how does this work marriage-wise? I mean, you guys happy doing this? I think a lot of people.
Kids is the advice.
Yeah, no kids.
I mean,
is
obviously,
for
you
sure.
guys don't have any kids, but I mean, is it? I mean, have you guys grown closer? You think because of your racing
of course,
business?
yeah, absolutely.
Good.
It's being partners in life. I mean, we've been together forever. I mean, for 16, 18 years. Don't ask me. We've been together for longer than we have not been together.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah, we know who we're dealing with one another. We complement each other well, and we wouldn't be able to do this obviously without her, without one another. But yeah, of course it's stressful. I mean, it's gonna be you work and live together. I mean, you guys see each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and
Gotta like each other.
a lot of times the context is not the most positive context. So, you know, it's kind of dealing with that adversity, just as we do in races and in the personal life as well, and just, you know, keeping the eye on the goal. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, but yeah, of course it's stressful.
All right, so people that want to reach out to you, obviously, they can reach out through us through the actual show. But if somebody says, "Hey, man, I want to give this a try," I know one of the options is to rent one of the cars at a track day or one of your track days.
Yeah, we do plenty of test days, either Roebling, Firm, or anywhere that's kind of on our calendar with Jay Zilla. We're more than happy to tow the car out there, and if you want to see if you're a right fit in the car, or if you even enjoy driving the Miata first before you jump into doing a race weekend, or if you just want to get some practice in the car before a race weekend, we make those readily available for test days.
And then social media.
Yep, Open Throttle Track Days on Instagram, Open Throttle Racing and Track Days on Facebook, and then of course my personal profile, Mike Gorman.
Not Mike Gorman's personal profile.
Mike Gorman's personal profile.
Mike Gorman has a lot of good things to say on the Champcar and WRL forums. Just I always look forward to Mike Gorman. Comment.
Getting those notifications.
I love getting let's see what Mike has to say today. But no, Mike, I mean, thank you guys. Obviously, to you guys, I mean, me and Ben have been a part of this. I've been a part of this. This program is probably one of the most rewarding things. I think watching the people, though, is the thing I've taken the most enjoyment. Watching these crew guys. I remember at Charlotte, you let some of the people take the M3 out, which was just huge. I mean, I really believe, again, that green car has changed some people's lives, because they always remember getting to drive that car. I've seen people light up when you let them drive one of the Miatas at a track day or something like that. So I think for you, at least for me, just on the outside and being a part of it, that's again, the rewarding thing is obviously you're doing this as a business, but you've really helped a lot of people in this hobby.
So. Of course, selfish in that regard. I mean, it's fun seeing the reactions that people have getting out of the car. So it just knows that you're doing the right thing.
I hear you. Well, guys, if you can reach out to Mike Gorman on his social media tags. You can reach out to me, obviously. He's pretty much at the track every weekend, it seems like.
Yeah.
I know this year we had 25 hours at Thunder Hill. This is actually a split weekend. So I'll be at Thunder Hill with Bradley in the E46. Yep. You'll be at Coda with everyone else.
Yeah, be in Austin, Texas, eating some Terry Black's barbecue and racing at Coda.
The hospitality's not going to come with us, is it?
Not. You're going to have to bring. There's some big shoes to fill for the hospitality.
All right, there's some. I'm sure there's a Sonny's or something around there.
I'm sure somebody will cater.
Before we go, thank you to our friends at Hawk. Hawk is actually the official brake supplier of Open Throttle.
Absolutely.
So the ER1 has been on the M3 all year and on all the Miatas. So reach out to our friends John Butler and everyone at Hawk, and we'll see you guys in, what was it, episode 4?
Yeah, episode 4.
We're going to have to find something to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, guys.